Right, Scott, let's move on to a film that, in terms of its deliberate offensiveness, looked at films like The Producers and such like and said, hold my beer.
Yes. With a title that pretty much accurately encapsulates my feelings towards it, and most people it would seem, Bamboozled drops us into the lap of Pierre Delacroix, Damon Wayans, a TV executive working under station boss and all-round jackass Thomas Dunwitty, played by Michael Rappaport, who dismisses his show ideas as mere Cosby clones, pushing for something a bit more, I believe urban would be the euphemism, where there's a record store. Exasperated, Pierre enlists two street entertainers, Savion Glover's Man Ray and Tommy Davidson's Womack, to star in a radical new pilot that will show Dunwitty his error by taking his request to the illogical extreme, resurrecting the minstrel shows of actually not all that long ago, but this time with African Americans in blackface. So far, so producers, particularly when it becomes, in defiance of all logic and reason, successful, and with any intended satire going roundly unnoticed by the general public. But Pierre soon gets over his disgust and learns to enjoy the glory, much to the disgust of his PA, Jada Pinkett Smith's Sloane Hopkins. The back half of the film deals with Womack and Man Ray's increasing misgivings about their line of work and a balance of their self-respect and bank balance before everything comes to an entirely out-of-place end, courtesy of Mos Def's militant hip-hop collective, and I guarantee you'll be left wondering why it was decided to move from a comedy to a melodrama midway through production. Now, I'm a little puzzled, as it says here that this was shot on mini DV, but I would swear this was actually recorded on a potato, with sound recorded on a smaller potato and mixed on, at best, a chip, or freedom fry, as I believe they're called in the USA. Perhaps the recent Criterion release cleans this up, but this film is, to my recollection, the only film I've ever had to radically tweak the EQ on just to have a slight chance of hearing what people are saying. We've mentioned Lee's tendency to go overboard on the underscoring, and this is so far the absolute nadir of it. While Damon Wayans has been scientifically proven to be the least objectionable Wayans family member, using the scientific progress of science, he's not a magician, and there's just not enough material here to work with, especially when dragged out over 135 minutes, using a delivery that gets irritating after about 10 of those minutes. Now, there's a message in here for sure, but even accounting for Lee's typical straightforward delivery of that message, this is a bludgeoning, such that what I take as the actual point, the lack of a varied and complete range of opportunities for African Americans in the studio system, is almost buried under this deluge of minstrel and related artifacts that show up in the closing reels or potato peels or whatever the equivalent should be in my theoretical tuber-based production pipeline. Look, I didn't hate Bamboozled, and as with a lot of Lee's work, the central arguments it's making are depressingly just as valid now as they were then, but between the haphazard presentation, confused tone, and just way too longicity of the piece, I would not be recommending this to anyone. Drew, what did you make of this one?
I really, really liked this.
Really?
Really, yeah. I had very little concept going into it. I've got the Criterion Collection, Scott, and while it's quite soft because it's like not in a high definition format, I didn't notice any of the problems that you mentioned at all.
Mm-hmm. But I think mine was based on an older DVD one, I think, and it looked awful and sounded worse.
It's soft, but it looked fine, and the sound was fine, beyond any underscoring and stuff. But that wasn't a technical issue. That was a choice. So, so I think you just had a bad luck with it. And I really, really liked it. I thought the satire was scathing. I'm glad to find that I didn't laugh at any of the bits that the audience in the film were laughing at, because that would have been a horrible thing to find out by yourself. But fortunately, no, my soul's clean on that one. I was just going to watch this slightly slack-jawed at something, because it was so offensive. And that's really the point. But at the same time, I'm thinking, I don't have any difficulty believing any of this right up to the point of the murder, in which case, weirdly, maybe because I was enjoying it so much, I didn't think about it until right now. Now I'm thinking about it, yeah, that seems a bit much. But the way, okay, yes, it's necessarily over the top, but the way that would actually be successful, that nobody would ever get the satire, that it would be taken up possibly even by black people as this sort of enjoyable thing, and there would be fans and everybody would be blacked up to watch, kind of depressingly read to me as exaggerated, hyperbolic, but believable. I don't know what else to say, other than that I really enjoyed it. I thought the satire was quite obvious. I thought his points came across quite well, and yeah, and you're right, the Wyans as Scientology before Damon Wayans as Scientology wasn't to be not an objectionable Wyans, which
Yes. I just couldn't get on board with it. Yes, I understand it's trying to be satirical, but it just missed. It's too broad for me, particularly when I think we've all come to the cultural understanding that blackface was a bad thing and we shouldn't do it again. And I don't think there's anyone that's really agitating for it to come back. So possibly there's maybe another angle we could have taken with this. But I mean, blackface is such a taboo that people who were dressed in blackface 20 years ago for a Halloween party are now getting cancelled for it. So I don't think we necessarily need to worry about the believability of it. I think in this particular instance, we're probably past it. A whole lot of other things we're not, and the kind of more stereotypical portrayal of African Americans in various like sitcoms and all that kind of stuff is arguably, to me, that was what he was trying to get at here. It's not really about blackface, but yeah, the rest of it is there, and I think had they focused on that rather than something as over the top as blackface, it might have been a bit easier to get on board with. But no, it's just, as I say, the technical quality of it was not to doing it any work favours, and I didn't find it all that funny, which was the problem. And then I didn't find the kind of drama parts of it all that compelling either. So it was a whole bunch of things that happened that I didn't really care about all that much. As I say, I didn't hate it even with that, and that's better than you can say for a lot of people. A whole bunch of pretty good performances in there, which and there's the odd Wines line which did make me crack up a little bit, which I was quite fond of, particularly after the Mos Def's rap group has their audition, where it's being a bit too black. I don't want anything black for another week after this. Yeah. I kind of get it, but at the same time, I just didn't like it very much.
It really worked for me. Although, actually, by far the most affecting portion of it is something that I think it might be viable for people to watch just on its own, which is a montage right towards the end of all of the cartoons and films and various other portrayals of Africans, which is, some of them are probably scarily recent as well.
Yeah.
And then bits of Birth of a Nation, which we've talked about before on this podcast. Mm-hmm. People like D.W. Griffiths thinking that black people weren't even capable of portraying black people correctly. Such was their ridiculously low opinion of them.
Yeah, I was just checking there. The BBC ran the black and white minstrel show till 1978, so it is not that not that recent.
People think there aren't problems with racism in Britain. There so are.
Yeah.
Tends to involve fewer deaths than in the United States, so I guess that's good. But yeah, that was a mainstream show. The BBC doesn't get more mainstream. I don't get more mention in the BBC, and that was to almost the time we were born. That's terrifying.
Yeah.
It's certainly interesting, I think. Even if you don't like it, I suspect it might be interesting enough to watch, but obviously I got a lot more of it than you did, Scott.
Yes.